really unhappy.
Do you remember when we had our previous boosters? Doing these, like, you can look and see what it is. It doesn't tell me anything about 70%. You know, we're 90% into the year. They know I'm target for a normal.
Yeah, I was a little on the fence not
I
knowing.
think maybe it's time to
I
look
think
at
we can
it.
get so that.
I did,
I just want to know where the red flag is. Just,
The 5 point reports.
just,
and road commission.
just give me a little synopsis and say, these are
did
the
write
10 things
motion
that
to table.
I think.
You guys ready?
I'm keeping an eye on.
Okay, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Commissioner McConnell,
Here.
Commissioner Baldwin,
Present.
Commissioner Beeden,
Here.
Commissioner Dunn,
Here.
Commissioner Rushing, Commissioner Vanden Bosch,
Here.
Chairperson Bohm.
Here. Items, additions, deletions, changes, items A, B, and C. Do I have a motion? Someone?
Make a motion to approve the agenda with the changes A and B.
And C.
And I actually see.
Oh, and
so-
C, I'm sorry.
Yeah, which we're going to be moving the general welfare resolution up from Q to, we're going to put that AA.
Okay.
I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Approval?
Make a motion, we approve the agenda as amended.
Support.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Items 5A and B.
I would make a motion to approve and file the minutes of the 9/16/21 commission meeting and the 10/7/21 standing committee meetings.
Second.
Discussion on anything? All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Proclamations. Item A, William Livesey for the Veteran of the Year 2021.
Mr. Chair, can I make a motion to approve the proclamation recognizing William Livesey as the 2001 St. Clair County Veteran of the Year?
Support.
Okay, discussion. We will make sure we get that to Chris Smith so they can get that to Mr. Livesey.
Thanks.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Item 7A through G.
Make a
Consent
motion
agenda.
to approve items 7A through 7G on the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion on anything here? All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Reports of standing and special committees. I'm going to go with you, Mr. Vanden Bosch.
I've got nothing tonight.
Okay? You?
No, sir.
Greg?
Wow, that's something. Nothing, he said. Look at, he won't even look at me. The only thing I have is Brockway Township is supposedly going to be sending us a letter to the commissioners. They're having some issues with the drain commission and on a drain that's been done. And I've been talking to them and I don't know, there's a lot of activity going on and a lot of people have been looking at it. DQ's been out and so there's just been some talk. I read the paper today, I don't know. I got the paper today and read the article, the Yale paper, and it just said that the supervisor was telling his constituents not to pay their taxes, their portion of the taxes this year for the drain assessment, and that they wouldn't have any issues. So I think there will be some issues, but I think everybody's, I don't know, I'm sure you're going to get a hard copy as well as an email and something. So when you get it, that's what it's about. I don't know what the resolve is. So I've been talking to Mr. Wiley and just telling him he's got to continue to talk to him and figure out what they have to do. So just if you hear something, that's what it is. That's all I have.
Georgia?
Yes.
Lisa?
Nothing tonight.
Just a quick update. So yesterday, as many of you know, Commissioner Vanden Bosch and I have been working on the Marine City Marina project. It's the 14 slips, 600 foot of linear frontage down there on the Bell River. As you well know, if you go down there, there's nowhere to pull in and dock a boat and, you know, all the above. There's some pretty good private investment going in down there right now. They, Bill Rose Marine's putting in a gas dock. They're doing some things. Marine City applied for a grant. We went and spoke back in August in front of the DNR in Lansing. Yesterday, that particular meeting was down in Detroit, and we had some outstanding questions. Got the questions answered. The project has scored out in a better than average higher level. So there's 40 million in requests, 22 or 23 are going to get funded, but it looks pretty good that that thing can come to fruition. So we will know more in December regarding that, and I did speak with Cheryl and Holly and some of the others. So no, all good stuff. So moving on, citizens wishing to address the board. Elizabeth Ely, science of COVID relating to general welfare resolution.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, thank you for moving that up in the agenda. I would just like to speak in favor of passing this resolution as written originally. This alleged emergency relies on garbage science as justification for severe actions against people, including intruding on their rights as parents to make health decisions for their kids. That's what brought on this resolution. So these cases are based on what? PCR testing already discredited, stats from corrupt government agencies, no adverse events locally, apparently, from the so-called vaccines, as the health director claims, because apparently St. Clair County accounts for none of the horrific, debilitating, and fatal incidents reported in the official government database covering everywhere else. Finally, everyone assumes proper isolation of the virus, which is simply not true. People around the world have requested evidence of isolation in Freedom of Information Acts and in active lawsuits and in defending criminal actions against them. And guess what? They get no documents responsive to your request, which is actually better than what people in St. Clair County get, which is no answer at all for dozens of people, and I believe that is illegal. Maybe the isolation of this virus lives at the St. Clair County Health Department, and we finally found it, but I doubt it, but I'll ask, huh? Also, after 25 cycles, the PCR is said to be meaningless, and none of these data that the health director puts up include how many cycles they're based on. But back to the basic issue here. The PCS doesn't detect any viruses, and the test kit inserts admit that fact. Let me remind you that the truth is a force of nature. You and the health department can run away from the truth for a while, but not forever. You will be held accountable and personally liable, believe it, for any failure to act. How do I know? Am I a lawyer? No. I'm a citizen. And I know that the chances of the citizens of this county and this nation putting up with this for even a few more weeks is very, very slim. Put yourself on the right side of history. Pass the General Welfare Resolution as originally written by citizen Geneva Bivens. It guarantees the constitutional, civil, and human rights of all residents of St. Clair County. Thank you.
McGalen Burrell, mandates.
Who was it, Jeff?
McGalen Burrell.
Mike Lynn.
Oh, Mike Lynn. All right, sorry about that. Sorry.
That's okay. Let's superficially examine the big lie. The U.S. funded the gain-of-function research at the Wuhan lab through Fauci. If China did not release the virus, they most certainly were instrumental in spreading the virus. Science concerning the coronavirus has been suppressed by not only big tech, but academia, MSM, large corporations, and even our government. Fear has been propagated continually. Lockdowns were instituted and schools were closed unrelentingly. Masks were instituted. All this not to control the disease, but to control society to its grave detriment. Vaccines, though not truly vaccines, were developed to supposedly control a disease that in children to age 19 have a death rate of 0.003%. And those up to the age 69, no more than a 0.5% chance of dying, with ages 70 and above having a death rate of maybe 5%, if we can believe the numbers. 70 to 94% of all recorded coronavirus deaths are over the age of 70 with one or more comorbidities. Dr. Christina Parks testified before the Michigan legislature. She emphasized that these current vaccines do not work and were never really meant to work as advertised. 11,000 is a conservative number of the deaths that can be attributed to the vaccine, which is probably a grossly underreported number. Injuries attributed to the vaccines, many of them permanent, are in the hundreds of thousands. People fully vaccinated are still getting sick, spreading the disease, and dying. Recently, the stats in Vermont indicated that almost 60% of those hospitalized for coronavirus were vaccinated. And there are many other stats that indicate the same thing. Do your research. Why are we all being required to get a vaccine? Power and money. There have already been billions of dollars made by the elite on this vaccine scam. Since August of 2020, there has been published treatments that cure coronavirus have started in the early stages, but our government has strongly restricted these, including Gretchen Whitmer. Dr. Peter McCulloch, America's Frontline Doctors, and many others have protocols that would have saved up to 74% of those who have been killed by the disease. This is a crime, and our government has been complicit.
Michaeline, you got 10 seconds. Could you wrap up?
Let's decide to stand up and no longer comply with arbitrary mandates.
Crystal Later.
Good evening, and thank you for letting me speak. This is my second time to the Commissioners' meeting, so I hope I'm going to do this right. My name is Crystal Later. I am a registered nurse, have been a nurse for going on 31 years. I own a home care and a CNA school in Port Huron, and my view on the COVID-19, when COVID first came, I was ahead of the game back in November of 2019, and I saw the numbers going from China, and I was trying to warn my family. I was watching mainstream media, and I came to the point I was washing my groceries, diligent with hand washing, etc. And a couple months into the pandemic, I was looking around to see actually how many people I knew and the people that I knew and the people that they knew were actually contracting COVID, and there were not any. I saw, deaths from hospice nurses that I know that the patient was on hospice. However, their death certificate showed COVID. I had a couple friends, their husband died on a motorcycle accident. His death certificate showed COVID. And I believe that that is fueled by the dollar. Many facilities are, getting money. There's a lot of COVID money. We all got, probably stimulus checks and things like that, but there's a lot of monies available to businesses, and a hospital is a business. So I saw those COVID numbers going up and up and up. That's one area. I know I only have a couple minutes here. And the last meeting, we talked about suicide, and I believe the director of CMH, Deb Johnson, was here and said that they really couldn't do a study. I know 3 people personally close to me that have committed suicide. One was in the river. He drowned himself early on in March of 2020. One of my employees, her fiance just committed suicide on Dove Road. He was the one who shot himself in the head. And another friend committed suicide by overdosing. So I know myself, I don't know how any of you feel, but I know myself, our life has changed. Being locked down, being indoors, we don't get enough vitamin D, which helps so that we don't get sick. Social interaction, I'm a very social person, and it's been very depressing mentally for me, being a nurse.
Crystal, you have 20
educated.
seconds. Please start wrapping up.
Thank you. Being educated, etc. So if we could just take a step back and look at maybe the big picture, try to take the politics out of it, which I know it's very hard, but ask yourself, how many people do you know that have truly had COVID and actually passed away from COVID? Thank you.
Mary Petrangelo.
My name is Mary Petrangelo, and I want to express my support for the St. Clair County Health Department. And I appreciate the dedication of Dr. Mercatant and her staff. I acknowledge the uncertainties faced by the medical profession by the challenges of this last year and a half, sometimes resulting in conflicting or confusing advice. But I also acknowledge the good faith efforts of the medical community to act in the best interests of the public. I'm disappointed in this new resolution, I believe it's 2117, which undermines the function of our county health department. And I'd like to point out that this resolution does not reflect the opinions of the entire county. To state in the very first sentence that this resolution reflects the opinions of the citizens of St. Clair County is a fallacy. More correctly, it should read the opinions of some of the citizens of St. Clair County and ought to reflect that sentiment.
Just so people know, there are two resolutions up for consideration this evening, and what you cited there was one of them. We have another one that was on the agenda. So, Sean Trendaway.
Evening, Commissioners, thank you. October 7th meeting saw amazing citizens speak up and speak out. There was passion on both sides. Citizens spoke for and against the health director, and both for and against you all as commissioners. This is amazing. First Amendment right as it should be used. Topics across the entire spectrum of COVID, rights of the people, responsibilities of the commission. I believe that there are still many unanswered questions. There is still some unchecked power. So who has the overall responsibility of overseeing the health director or any of the county directors? Board of Commissioners or the county administrator? According to the website, for St. Clair County website, as county administrator, the department is responsible for serving as a liaison between county departments and the Board of Commissioners. The health department, as many others, are listed to report directly to the county administrator. So just some clarification there would be nice. Next, the category is 300, policy number 303, management rights and responsibilities. St. Clair County Board of Commissioners reserves exclusively to itself the right to establish the overall operational policy and procedure of the county. Does that include the health department? It also states discipline up to and including termination of its direct appointees. Is the health director or any of the other directors direct appointees? Or county employees concerning with the board is legally required to decide disciplinary matters. So I guess the ultimate question is who's watching who? We also heard from the support for the director that, their words, not mine, at-will employees cannot be fired for doing their job. According to category 300, number 305, policy employment at will, at will is except for, or all employees are at will except for where clearly articulated as just cause by a CBA. Is that policy different for the health director and other directors? We're just looking for clarification from the board on that. Is there a different policy and rule sets for each department head? We, the people, would really like to know who is in charge. As I said before, there was a lot of passion in the October 7th meeting. One particular individual, also a county employee, this individual came up to the podium and attacked the room. The one thing that pretty much the majority of us didn't do, other than the director, who is a public official, we didn't attack the speakers. But she quoted, "This is incredibly sad and disheartening." And then on to the level of disrespect when others are voicing opinions different than yours is sad. Do you know what I find sad? A department head who strolls in wearing a mask proceeds to give us a stern talking to about rudeness, all while knowing that inside she's a hypocrite, lecturing us about the efficacy of masks in front of the health director while parading around in the room, but yet follow her on Facebook, and in the last 2 weeks, Major League Baseball games, Michigan State football games, tailgate parties, Ford Field watching the Detroit Lions. I just think that this needs to be checked. Take a look at maybe, what that person said and might need a talking to. So what I find is incredibly sad and disheartening to me is
Sean, you
that-
got about 20 seconds if you could.
Thank you. That a director would act this way in front of the people. Again, who's in charge? Just curious, where's the accountability? And I think that's about it. Thank you very much.
Sherry Allison. Two. All right, Shelley LaRose.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you very much for having me. I am new to Michigan, roughly. I moved here from Tennessee, and I've been here about 10 years. I've currently started my own business here. I own a salon and spa in Marysville. I deal with the public. I hear every story from people who are pro-mask, pro-vaccine, to people who are against it and for our constitutional rights. So I do see both sides. I can't imagine the pressure that our health director must have been under. I try to be empathetic when it comes to issues like that. You don't know until you're in their shoes, right? So with that, I do have respect. However, I do encourage everyone to choose more constitutional rights. Our nurses, I deal with a lot of nurses. They are broken. They're done. They're exhausted, okay? They do not want to work anymore. It's either they're tired of wearing 2 masks or they don't want to be vaccinated. Why? Because they've done their research. I don't know if anyone has done this research, but it's everywhere. If you look up Bill Gates and what he has been doing the past few years, it's bad, okay? This all is encompassed with the UN's Agenda 21 and a UN Agenda 2030, okay? So their main goal in this vaccine, okay? Think of your cell phone. It's a device, okay? And I want to be proven wrong when it comes to this vaccine, okay? So the vaccine is going to have graphene oxide in it, all right? So the graphene oxide is going to link up with the 5G network. Therefore, you are then activated. I can tap into you, just like our elections, okay? Our elections are on the internet, all right? We can be tapped into and changed. The results can be changed. So does the election matter in this case? Absolutely. We're on a national crisis. We are on a global crisis. Okay, this is so alarming. I have students that are college students that are losing their scholarships because they're being bullied, because they're not wanting to get vaccinated. This is ridiculous. So when it comes down to our election, why would they want to stop our 2020 election? Because there's another agenda at play here. When we want to go back to, let's control the populace, let's lock them down, let's use fear, okay? I mortgaged my home to invest in my business so I could have the American dream, right? That's what we do, we invest in ourselves. And so I invest, and then year 2, I get locked down for 3 months, scared to death I'm gonna lose everything that I just built for. I left my home to move up here to build, okay? So you're locked down for 3 months. You know, I'm crying with my clients. People are scared to death. So you have people that have to get vaccinated because their children are telling them they can't see their grandchildren unless they get vaccinated, but they don't want to. Like, it's this vicious, evil cycle. So when it comes to God, we all have that discernment. We have that gift that God gave us. So anyone today wearing a mask, do it. Like, I support you. If you don't, I support you. If you want to get vaccinated, do it. That's your choice. But when you start to force us, you're just going to get resistance. This is happening everywhere. I can't handle it anymore in my own business. There's thousands of people that come through, and I can show you a record because I have signatures that signed off liability. And I promise you, just in Marysville, which I pretty much serve St. Clair County, 99% of people did not want to wear a mask, nor did they. You know, is it my job to be a mask police? No. So it all worked out. And when I heard at the last meeting that there was only 495 deaths in the past 19 months in St. Clair, that's not a whole lot. And then we're not even guaranteed that it is exactly COVID. So what is it? This agenda, what I want is for our hospitals and our doctors to be held accountable. I want to know exactly what's in those vaccines, because if it's not in these, thank God, but it's coming. So everyone needs to wake up, and they need to understand what graphene oxide is and how it's going to link up to the 5G network, okay? So we're going into, it's called
Shelley, you got about 20
transhumanism.
seconds. Could you wrap up, please?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
And this subject makes people really uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to talk about this, but it's true. And what's so sad is that our information is being censored, whether it's Facebook. There's some things I can't even send through Messenger. The video size is too big and it's less than 5 minutes. Like, I don't know what's going on with our technology. It's really scary, okay? I am up here not only fighting for me, I'm fighting for people who don't have a voice, and I'm fighting for the unborn. And the whole key in this vaccine with the graphene oxide is when we inject them, okay? Let's say I get vaccinated and my husband does not, and we have a child. That technology is supposed to go into the baby, and then the baby, okay, it's not going to stop. That is their agenda. And if you do your research, there's plenty of it out there. There's so many doctors that are screaming right now saying, don't do it. You know, and if you are vaccinated, there may be an antidote. I hope to God there is. Am I a medical professional? No. And I'm not doing this to disrespect anyone in the medical field, because I can't imagine what you have been enduring. But what I'm mainly concerned with as well is our blood supply being contaminated, okay? If what I'm saying is true and it becomes true, and then I need blood, and you're gonna give me that blood, okay, that's already been vaccinated, we have a problem. When it comes to, there's so many things that I can talk about, so I'm gonna stop here, and I'm gonna say, this is not something that I enjoy doing. I'm learning. I asked you a few questions last time. I'm trying to get involved. I'm 33 years old, okay? I'm doing my best to be a patriot right now, and I think it's really important that we have each other's back. And I really hope that you all do the right thing and do not mandate this county, and that you fight for our country right now. And when I go on the St. Clair County Clerk's website and I hit elections, okay? You hit elections and it says St. Clair County was unofficial results. What does that mean? So I go to show Ivan Rakelin. I don't know if you know that name, but he's a 20-year Green Beret veteran.
You got about 20 seconds, Shelley.
20 seconds. He's an intel officer.
and he's a constitutional lawyer. So you have Seth Keschel, you have Jaron Jackson, you have James Charles, and Ivan Raiklin. They're all fighting for this country right now. He was in Lansing, Michigan at the Capitol last week. So when it comes to these vaccines, the election does matter. So I also want a forensic audit. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Deborah Burgoyes.
I'm a resident of this county, and I do not, in any way, shape, or form, support these resolutions, 2117A or 2116B. I feel that they're an attempt to politicize a global pandemic. I absolutely support the county health department and Dr. Mercante. And I feel that your job as commissioners is to support the public, the entire public, not just the angry mob that's done research. And my expectation is that that's what you do, to look out for the welfare of the entire public. Thank you.
Garth Crewell.
My name is Garth Crewell from Port Huron. Look, we all know this virus is real. It's dangerous. It's affecting in one way or another every one of your constituents. And in some sad cases, people have died. No one expects the County Board of Commissioners to be the health experts of anything. All we can hope for is that you don't put obstacles in the path of people who are actively working to protect the lives of you, me, and everyone else.
Virginia Corey.
Good evening, thank you. I'm a retired nurse. I have a daughter who's a nurse who's on a COVID unit in a teaching hospital. And yeah, nurses are tired right now, and it's because they're taking care of very, very sick patients. And often the reason is because people around them didn't want to wear a mask, didn't want to get a vaccine, and people are dying. I'm really sad to think that 495 doesn't seem like very many people to some people in this room. And it is something, even just to my daughter, it breaks her heart to see these people dying unnecessarily in many cases. I don't know where the facts and figures are coming from to think that all these people that are sick are people who are vaccinated that are hospitalized, but it's simply not true. Most of her patients are people who were not vaccinated. The few that were vaccinated had immunosuppressant diseases, were transplant patients, such as it is. The second point I wanted to make was that a number of people I talked to were very interested in this meeting, but were very discouraged about the fact that coming here would put themselves at risk for COVID, because there were so many people, for instance, last time, who were in this room who were not masked and who readily admitted they weren't vaccinated and who had, in many cases, had COVID. And the point I wanted to make about that is that a number of people went downstairs so that they could be safer, and there was no order, none in that room. They were taught, people who got up to discuss support for Dr. Mercante were talked over loudly, and it was unfortunate because that room, I suspect with the overflow room is considered part of the meeting, right? It's a public meeting, and that there are points of order. And so I would ask that the county commissioners would direct that someone in the room have some authority to keep order in that room, so that citizens like myself don't have to be afraid to come to this meeting.
Virginia, you got about 20 seconds.
That's it. Thank you.
You want to read that in? We have one that was emailed that asked to be read into the record.
Dear Commissioner, my name is Ruth Habalewski, a resident of Port Huron. I support Dr. Annette Mercantant and the St. Clair County Health Department. I thank them for their efforts, especially during this COVID pandemic. I do not support Resolution 2116B and Resolution 2117A. What is the purpose of either resolution? Are the Board of Commissioners attempting to micromanage the St. Clair County Health Department and the county residents' health care choices? If there are federal mandates such as employee vaccines tied to federal money that the St. Clair County government receives, how does this affect the resolutions? Vote no for both resolutions, 2116B and 2117A. Sincerely, Ruth Habalewski.
Okay. No other citizens to be heard. We're going to move on to item 11. Let's call it AA. There's two resolutions that are in front of you for consideration this evening. One of them was emailed previous from a resident. I think at the last meeting, we gave Gary direction to go back and to put a resolution together. Gary, you want to chit-chat a little bit, I guess, about what you came up with? And
yes, there are a number of similarities between the two resolutions and obviously differences. One's the Resolution A, the one that was emailed, that was brought here word for word, what it says, be it resolved that St. Clair County shall not require or mandate to any employee, prospective employee, contractor, any form of vaccine or similar medical treatment. I changed it to read, be it further resolved, except as required by law, St. Clair County shall not require the same thing, any vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine. The reason for that is what we know, based on what we've received, is the president has issued an executive order, and it says that any federal contractor has to require the employees presumably related to the services in the federal contract to be vaccinated, and that's the county jail, because we have a contract with the federal government, Department of Justice and ICE for housing federal prisoners. And it also says that any healthcare organization that receives federal funding, Medicare or Medicaid funding, has to require mandatory vaccinations. And the county health department receives that funding. And there may be other interpretations that will obligate the county to follow that executive order or face serious consequences once we get the OSHA order that's actually going to spell it out in greater detail. So I can't recommend to the board that they just say they will not, under any circumstances, require any vaccinations when the law, in fact, maybe require it, and number two, that we could face serious consequences if you don't. In a lot of the other ways, they're very similar. I also put in it that the commissioners, speaking on your behalf, you might not agree, opposes any federal mandates concerning masking or vaccines. And I think that from the discussion I've heard generally is that you think this should be your business, not the federal government, telling people in the state of Michigan how to deal with health issues like this. I added a paragraph where the board commended the employees of the St. Clair County Health Department, administration, other county officials and departments, and community care providers for their immense efforts throughout the pandemic. And then finally, similar to the other one, said that we encourage all residents to increase their awareness of available immunizations by discussing the risks and benefits of available immunizations from their chosen healthcare providers. So Those are the main differences, adding the health department, taking away the language that says the county will not, in capital letters, require or mandate any immunization, and I say, well, COVID-19, because there's a bunch of other ones we have to require. And I added except as required by law. Also on the exemption for face mask, I said that we will not oppose any recognized legal right to an exemption for face masking or any other similarly mandated preventive activity. And there are exemptions under the law for those things. So that's basically summarizing the differences.
Questions for Gary?
So Gary, this is a resolution. Amos, gentleman talked, I think at the last meeting, and when Amos got up and he talked, I don't know that as county commissioners, we've ever said we have a mask mandate, we have a vaccine mandate. I don't ever remember us making a motion that everybody has to have a vaccine or that everybody had to wear a mask. So I was under the understanding that in the previous 18 months, when there was a mask mandate, it wasn't something that we generated. It was something that was.
Yeah, can I address that?
Please.
That was massive misunderstanding. One very nice lady came up and talked to me after the meeting, and she wondered how Dr. Mercantile could have a masking mandate and then pointed out something in the recent budget law. So it was the wrong law, but it was also the wrong facts because Dr. Mercantile never mandated anything until it was the contact tracing and quarantine. That was the only thing. So the masking mandate, the quarantine, all of those things came from first came from the governor, and it was determined that she couldn't legally do it. And then it came from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Education as it related to school masking. So Dr. Mercantile was getting pounded for stuff she never did. And obviously you folks had no involvement in it because you didn't do anything either. This was stuff that was done over a year ago by the state of Michigan, had nothing to do with her or St. Clair County. And the only thing she's ever mandated was the quarantine and contact tracing in anticipation of another surge in cases. So I'm glad you brought that up because it was like massive confusion, so.
During that time, the letters of enforcement came from our health department.
Right.
So that's what, like, I had to have the sign on the
Yeah,
store.
and that's a good point.
That says you have to have a mask on. It wasn't my rule. I was told that if I wanted to keep my doors open, I had to put that sign on my door.
And the reason for that is the state issued the order, and included in the order was an order to our health department saying they had to enforce it. And the state public health code requires that. They can make the rules up and then have local health departments, which they oversee and fund, and then say, you enforce it. So that's why the letters were coming from her. It was just a lot of bad information that resulted in a lot of hard feelings toward her for things she never did.
So I'm going to just share one story with you. Everybody on this board knows I'm in the fitness business, and we were closed. And I was down in my St. Clair gym working out the one day. Somebody looks in my windows, and like 2 minutes later, the phone rings. It's the St. Clair police. They go, you got somebody working out in your gym. I said, it's me. I own the GD joint, right? But that's, I mean, you had people walking around, you know, calling the police on myself, who's a business owner. So you want to talk about hard, frustrating, guy that was closed, lost a ton of money, so on and so forth. So I understand the frustrations, you know, people, and hopefully we can kind of put this thing behind us and move forward. So any other questions for Gary on the resolution? I have a motion for.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So Gary, let's say we pass this tonight, whether it's MIOSHA or OSHA or President Biden tomorrow says, okay, this is how it is. We have to follow that.
Right. The way we have always operated is if there's something legal that happens, an executive order, MIOSHA, OSHA, that really is directed at us, if we feel it's illegal, unlawful, it's what's happened, we challenge it in the courts. We don't not follow it, and then and reap the consequences. So in other words, if we'll evaluate whatever comes down, and assuming it's an order directed at the county, it'll be followed, and we'll come to you with a legal opinion as to whether you should challenge it or not.
Any other discussion? Do I have a motion for either one of the resolutions?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for resolution, for the first resolution. That would be 2717. Is it A?
A.
A.
Is there a second? No second? Okay, it dies, lack of a second. Do I have a motion for 2117B?
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion to support Resolution 2117B.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner McConnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Baldwin,
Yes.
Commissioner Beeden,
No.
Commissioner Dunn,
Yes.
Commissioner Vanden Bosch,
No.
Commissioner Bone.
Yes. Okay, moving on. Item number A, the United Way of St. Clair County. Brent?
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board on a very important subject in our community, and that is United Way. It is that time of year again that we go out into the community as a united effort to take care of our community. Ask our citizens, our businesses, and our retail stores to all band together for the betterment of our community. This year, we're looking at 3 different options to make sure that we're doing for our community. First, we're going to reconnect, and we're all doing that a little bit at a time as we come out of the 19 months of kind of isolation and so on, is to reconnect with each other, to talk about, once again, that social aspect of us taking care of one another. We want to re-engage. We want to talk about what's going on in our community and what is ailing our community, what's happening. We know that 42% of our citizens in this community, in St. Clair County, are on the edge. 42% of our folks work every day doing what they need to do, with the risk of one incident putting them over the edge and needing a helping hand. And that's what United Way is there for. We want to make sure that our kids are strong and ready for school, and we want to make sure that our young families have the resources and their services available when things come into play. That's what United Way does. The last thing that we want to do is reinvest. And that's what I'm asking everyone to consider tonight, is to reinvest in our community once again, like you've done in the past. I'm proud of my Board of Commissioners that are here tonight. I'm proud of the past Board of Commissioners for what they've done. Not only what they do every day, sorting out the day-to-day activities of, do we have nice roads? Do we have good industry? Do we have all of the infrastructure that we need? But you've also have stepped up to the plate when it comes to helping our community. Individually, you've all given a little bit of your time, your talents, and your treasure to our community for United Way. I'd like to show a short video and then ask for any questions, because like I said, I need your help. But I want your help based on the facts, based on what you feel about how you can help. And this video that we have today kind of highlights some of the people in our community that have gotten help and want you to know how important United Way is to them in their life. You're asking a lot of a guy that doesn't do tech. This? Oh, okay. I apologize.
Never said you were tech savvy.
Hi, I'm Mark Simone. I'm this year's campaign chair. I'm very excited to be part of this year's campaign and raise funds for our residents of St. Clair County. You will hear some stories from local families that have been impacted by United Way. These stories are truly inspiring.
My favorite thing to do at Harvard is when you help somebody and they say thank you, and they don't just say it once, they say it a couple times, and they walk out with a smile on their face. It can get touching, but it feels good when they say thank you. And you know, when they say thank you, they appreciate it.
When I got into a place, I had nothing, and the ARC got me food, they got me supplies for the toiletries, they got me my furniture, and I was situated, and I still have stuff from them, so.
What Sun has done for me is gave me new opportunities and to help me break out of my shell just a little.
What Sun means to me, Sun means a lot. As an organization, it has really brought me out my circle. It helps me talk to other people. I think the organization opens a lot of doors that are specifically made for others, and that allows people to be able to do what they love at the same time. They're able to do it with knowing that all of this leads back to a ministry.
I come to United Way probably over a year ago, and I needed a little bit of assistance. They was able to help me for what I needed. When I seen what they was doing, become a volunteer, and I've enjoyed it. And we also have people come in that need assistance with food, which we have help with. And it could be quoting, it could be they might have had a fire and we was able to help in that way, you know, extra stuff. I didn't realize how much they do for people until I started getting involved. We can't do this alone. United Way has come in and helped us, which is a great help for us. It takes all of us to make this work.
I did not have a place. I was at a friend's house, and there was no homes around here, and I had no job, and I was homeless, and she got me into the Sanborn Memorial Home, and they did a file for Social Security for me. And right now I got into innovative housing, and the ARC are helping me out. The United Way is helpful around here. It would be nice to get back to your community and live united.
We get to do all different types of activities. We do projects, we help the kids, we interact with them, we go on all types of trips.
I came out of a home that had a lot of ministry in it, and to be out and hang out with friends is a really good atmosphere and a really good environment to grow up in. And being able to have them opportunities and be able to help others with them opportunities, I think is very special, and it means a lot to me.
Please give
and live united.
Investing in our community is how we can make St. Clair County a better place. Some of our neighbors have faced unforeseen circumstances that prevent them from daily activities or resources we may take for granted. I am humbled to have an opportunity to lead this year's campaign and ask for your support. United Way is seeking to provide programs our community has depended on for years. Please don't let another day go by without supporting United Way to help our neighbors.
United Way makes it easy for contributors to support local organizations. Volunteers ensure that these organizations are fiscally sound so that you don't have to research where your gift goes. Contributors are able to give any amount over time to make big impacts on our community.
With that, I'd like to ask if there are any questions about United Way. Seeing none, I want to iterate again how proud I am of this commission, proud of this county, and proud of the things that we do together when we live united and we pull together in a united effort to make sure that when someone who reaches out for help finds that help, and that's through United Way. You have a pledge card in front of you. I hope you consider this year doing what you've done in the past, or if not, a little bit more, because we've helped about 16,000 people. That's about 1 in 10 in our community, and we know that that number is going up. There's a lot of issues in our community, and I could use your help. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I hope we all help and live united. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on. If it seems like we go through some of these agenda items fairly quick, they were already on our previous meeting, been approved, put on to full board. So then really commissioners have 2 weeks to be able to go out and get any additional information if they have to get on any of these. So Moving on, item B, the approval of county disbursements.
I would make a motion to approve the September 2021 county disbursements in the amount of $43,795,466.27.
Support.
Discussion. Roll call.
Commissioner Baldwin?
Yes.
Commissioner Beeden?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Vanden Bosch?
Yes.
Commissioner McConnell?
Yes.
Chairperson Bone?
Yes. We're going to go to the Tri Hospital funding update.
Well, I'm as challenged as Brent on technology, so don't go far, Paul, wherever you are. Good evening, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to come and share with you a little bit of what's happening with respect to ambulance service and where we think we might need to go moving forward in the future. I'm going to try to move fairly quickly. I know I'm a little bit long-winded. I confess, I admit that. But I think there's information here that it's important that you see and you understand as we move forward on determining where we look at, or what we look at in terms of how we fund our ambulance services here in the county moving forward. I think most of you have already heard from me, so I am going to try to move fairly quickly through the presentation. Very quickly, this is a map of the service area. This is a map of St. Clair County, obviously. The areas shaded in white are those areas served by Tri Hospital Ems. Those areas covered in yellow or gold are served by other providers. Riley, Wales, Columbus, and Casco are served by Richmond Lennox out of Macomb County. And of course, the city of Marysville provides ambulance service to the residents of the city of Marysville as well. The red dots on there represent where we have our ambulance stations located. Those are all ambulances that are on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And before I move on to the next screen, I would just encourage you to look at the areas to the west in Commissioner McConnell's district, Yale and KPAC area, because I'm going to bring those back up in a few minutes and just kind of share with you some of the challenges that we have in providing service to what I would call more rural portions of our county.
So you have 9 rigs on at all time?
We do have 9 rigs on 24/7, and we have 2 additional trucks on Monday through Friday for 12 hours a day. So we have a total of 11 on duty for the most part. Very quickly, some of the demographics about Tri Hospital Ems. We were established in 1983. We've been in business serving the citizens of St. Clair County since 1983. We are a nonprofit 501c3 corporation. Currently, we're handling about 20,000 requests for ambulance service on an annual basis. About 17,000 of those actually translate into actual chargeable runs in which we would derive a revenue from that. As I said, we have 11 ambulances on location, about 130 employees, serve about 130,000 of the citizens of St. Clair County. And we do survey our customers every year, and we average customer satisfaction return of about 95, almost 96%, very consistently year after year. We are a full advanced life support provider. What that means is that every ambulance that we put on the road is staffed and equipped with a paramedic. That is a requirement here in our county, and so we abide by that. We are a nationally accredited ambulance service, one of only 200 in the entire United States that has achieved that accomplishment. As far as our funding is concerned, and this is kind of going to be important as we talk a little bit more about where we go, we are currently 100% funded through a fee-for-service concept. And what that simply means is people call for service, and we provide that service. We bill them or their insurance company for that service, and that's what supports our operation. We do not receive currently any other funds from any other place other than the users of the service. In addition to that, as you saw on the opening screen, we are a system or an organization owned by our hospitals. However, we do not provide any dividends back to our owner hospitals, and we never have. 100% of all the revenues derived within the organization or from the organization stay within the organization to continue to provide the services that we provide. In 2020, we had a total of about $900,000 in what we refer to as bad debt write-off. And those are accounts where the patient insurance maybe didn't cover all of the charge, and the patient had a copay or a deductible that they were responsible for, and they simply did not pay the bill. And so after we work those accounts for a period of time, our auditors require us to simply write those off because we deem them uncollectible after a period of time. So we write off about just shy of $1 million a year in uncollectible.
What kind of revenue would you be doing in the course of a year?
We're running right around $10 million a year operation.
So 10% hits.
10% of our revenue, yeah. So I want to just take a minute and talk to you about this because I think some people might be surprised by this slide. And I think when we talk about it, when we think about what our essential service is, I think it's pretty obvious that police and fire, we all know, and legally those are considered essential services out there. And therefore communities have obligations to provide certain levels of those services. What you might find interesting is that EMS is not an essential service under the law. There are only 11 states in the United States currently that recognize EMS as an essential service and mandate that communities ensure that that service is provided to their citizens. Michigan is not one of those states. So really, EMS, for the most part, is a free market business, and it is not considered an essential service. I think if we were to survey whatever's left of the audience, they must have heard I was getting up here. But I think most people would assume that when they get in a car accident and someone dials 911 or they have chest pain, I think most people make the assumption that an ambulance is going to come and that ambulance has already been secured for them, but in reality it hasn't. I went and contacted Central Dispatch Director Tina Bricker this week, and I just said, can you give me a breakdown of the requests for service that actually come in through the Central Dispatch call or 911 center? And this is how they kind of break down for 2020. 61% of all the requests were law enforcement related, 4% of the requests were fire related, and 35% of the requests were EMS or medical related. So I thought that was kind of an interesting piece of information to share with you. So here are the challenges really that bring me before you tonight. Expenses are rising faster than revenues. We have, for the past 38 years, provided ambulance service for the most part with no supplemental financial support outside of the fee-for-service that we charge. And I will admit, because some of you here have been here a while, there was a period of time when St. Clair County did provide an ambulance subsidy out of your general fund. It amounted to somewhere between, at one point, maybe $125,000, and at the high point, probably about $250,000 to $300,000 a year. That went away in 2004, and we have not received any supplemental income beyond our fee-for-service since that time. Unfortunately for our business, much like many businesses, expenses are rising faster than revenues are rising. And unfortunately, because of the nature of how ambulance services are funded through insurance companies, we simply do not have the ability to increase rates when our expenses increase. All of our payments that we receive through insurance companies are generally fixed rates or determined by sources other than us, okay? So we don't have, I can increase rates by 50% tomorrow, and that 50% increase simply goes into what we call a contractual adjustment, and we never see that increase. Okay, so you'll see this a little bit clearer in a future slide. The other thing that we've experienced, and Commissioner Van den Bosch I think would agree with me on this, serving on the fire department in Marine City, we've seen a significant increase in demand for assistance to citizens. For things like lift assists, and those do not result in any kind of revenue, but they do require resources for us to have available to be able to respond to citizens when they require assistance. Additionally, we see a lot of abuse within the 911 system for ambulance services, and a number of people request services that really don't need an ambulance. Unfortunately, under Michigan law, we have no ability whatsoever to refuse service to them. We are required by law to provide service regardless of whether we feel they meet that requirement or not. The other item, the next item on there is what I really want you to focus on a little bit here, and it's what I refer to as the cost of readiness. I've from time to time will get a question from a patient or a family member that'll say, you know, I got a bill for $1,000 to go from, you know, 2 miles down the road to the hospital. It can't possibly cost $1,000. Well, it probably didn't for that 2-mile ride, but what's built into those costs is what we refer to as the cost of readiness, or the cost of preparedness. Right now, if you look across the street at my office over there, you're probably going to see an ambulance sitting in the garage. That ambulance is not productive right now. It's not generating any income. However, to every citizen in this community, that ambulance is sitting there staffed and ready to go. That is the cost of readiness. Our costs are fixed all the time. We don't get to change them when call volumes drop, because we have to be available for any request that comes in, and we don't know when those requests are going to come in. And so the cost of readiness is really what drives the cost of our industry up significantly. The other thing that I would share with you that is a significant challenge, those areas, Yale and KPAC, that I referenced earlier on the map, those communities comprise about 42% of our market. And those communities are considered extremely rural. And by that, what I mean is that they have a lot of geographic area to cover, but there's not a lot of population, and there's not a lot of call volume or demand or request for service. However, because of the vastness of those areas, we still have to have ambulance coverage to those communities so that when a request does come in, we can respond. As far as increasing expenses, I'm sure you've probably never heard this before, but we have a workforce challenge going on right now. And I realize that this is going on everywhere, but it's incredibly challenging right now in the EMS industry. Our organization right now, we are about 10% understaffed with absolutely no applicants whatsoever because of the uniqueness of the licensing requirements for EMS personnel. We simply do not have a pool of people in which to choose or select from. We have, and I'll just take a little side digression here, but with the vaccine mandates, as you guys have already been discussing tonight, we estimate that potentially another 15% of our workforce will leave our organization when the vaccine mandate hits. And we are required, because we are a contractor of the federal government through the Medicare program. We too will be significantly impacted by that. So it's going to take what is already a problem and compound that problem even further. In the last 12 months, we have increased our wages by 24%, totaling about $900,000 of new expenditures. We had to do that in order to keep our current workforce and to get our workers to come to work over the last several months. The other thing that kind of caused our workforce problem is with the onset of the COVID pandemic about 18 months ago, most of the training programs that train EMTs and paramedics across the state of Michigan shut down. And they didn't restart. And so we would normally be recruiting those graduates into our organizations right now, and we simply do not have them because the programs ended and they did not restart them. We have now, in our organization, just in September, started our own paramedic program. We had partnered for about 5 or 6 years with the community college. They were doing all of our paramedic training through the college. We were supporting them with our employees and sending them to their program. And in July of 2020, they informed us that they would be discontinuing that training program and had no intentions of restarting it. So we had to start looking for alternatives for producing new paramedics that we could recruit into our organization. Additionally, again, we are forced to deploy additional resources because the demand for service has increased, and we're seeing more and more requests that are not generating any revenue for us to help offset the cost of deploying those resources to meet those demands. So here's the revenue piece of it. And I talked a few minutes ago about if our costs go up by 50%, we'll just raise our rates by 50%. It doesn't work that way in the ambulance industry, and quite frankly, it doesn't work that way in healthcare for the most part. If you look at if you look on the left side under revenues, Medicare 59%, 59% of all the patients we transport are on Medicare. 23% of all the patients we transport are on Medicaid, and then you can see the balance of them down. If you go across, what I did was just a snapshot of what the reimbursement rate is from those payers dating back from 2017 through the current time. I've highlighted Medicaid for a very specific reason. You'll notice from 2017 to 2021, that rate did not go up very high, did it? But if you notice on the bottom line, under our cost per transport, our cost per transport went up. Wages went up, fuel went up, insurance went up, and so on and so forth. I will tell you, and I think some of you already know this, but I spent a great deal of time this spring lobbying the Michigan legislature. I did testify before both the House and Senate in May, requesting an increase in Medicaid funding. And this past fall, finally, for the first time in 20 years, we have not had a Medicaid increase in ambulance reimbursement in 20 years from the state. The state did allocate significant additional funding for ambulance service. The problem with it is it's just a start. It's not going to solve the problem for us. And we still, at the moment, don't know exactly what that's going to translate into because the payer profiles have not been developed yet. But I do want to thank the Michigan legislature publicly as well as the governor because they did resolve that issue in a bipartisan way. The Michigan legislature led the effort, and the governor supported it and signed the bill, resulting in an additional $12.9 million allocation in ambulance funding for the state of Michigan. So these are the challenges that we're facing. Again, if you look at the Medicare line, 59, almost 60% of every patient we transport is on Medicare. Medicare will pay me right now $422. I can charge them $5,000 and they still pay me $422. It doesn't matter what we charge. We are obligated under law to accept whatever they allow for that particular level or for that particular service. And so you can see that raising rates in our business does absolutely nothing for us whatsoever in terms of generating revenue. The cost of readiness, again, I've already talked about this a little bit. It's those fixed costs, or those fixed assets that are here available, located strategically throughout the county, ready to go on a moment's notice. And there is an extremely high cost in ensuring that those resources are going to be available when the public needs it. So the government, any kind of subsidy or millage or supplemental income would help us to offset the cost of those services when they're not generating any revenue. So these are those rural areas I spoke of a few minutes ago, and you'll recognize many of them, but between our Yale and our KPAC ambulance stations, we cover these communities with those two trucks. And those communities comprise about 42% of our response area geographically, not in terms of call volume, but in terms of geography or the geographic area in which we cover. So let me show you what those cost us. The Yale station, each of our ambulance stations right now cost us about $822,000 a year. Those are fixed costs that never change. Those are, it doesn't matter if anything bearing on how much call volume we do or how busy the station is. Those are the costs of equipment and staff and infrastructure and insurances and all of the fuel and everything that goes into operating one ambulance 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Based on the call volume in the Yale station market, we generate about $365,000 a year. And we're taking a loss of about $450,000 a year in that ambulance alone. KPAC is even worse because it has a much lower call volume in those areas. But you can see that between those two losses, we're losing about $1 million a year in those operations. Up until this point, we have been able to subsidize those losses through the call volume in the other parts of our service area. However, we are finding that that is not possible moving forward. Again, the expenses of operating our organization are rising faster than the reimbursements are. And as a result of that, we don't believe that we're going to be able to subsidize the cost, these losses, moving secure ambulance service in the county. Right now, within my organization, we are projecting an operating deficit of about $360,000 in fiscal year 2021, which will end in December. Next year, based on our projections, we anticipate $1 million deficit. We won't be in business in 2023 if we don't find a way to offset that. I don't mean to be blunt, but that's the reality that I'm dealing with right now. We simply cannot maintain service at the level in which we currently provide it to the citizens of this county without having some method of supplemental funding to offset these losses that are occurring. The other thing I would just simply point out to you is that it really has no bearing on what ambulance company provides your service. You can throw Tri Hospital Ems out the window and bring in Greg McConnell's ambulance service if you would like, okay? You're going to face the exact same numbers. It's not going to change. It has no bearing on who the provider is or anything like that. It's just.
I would probably want to run mine in the metro area rather than
you should.
My 8 townships in 1 city and 2 villages.
Well, and I think that's a great point, Greg, if you don't mind me. You know, that's exactly the place where my board is at, and that they're looking at saying, well, let's get rid of that Yale and KPAC white elephant and, you know, cut our losses. We don't want to do that, folks, because those communities need ambulance service too. And I can tell you, if we vacate those areas and someone else comes in, they're going to be standing here where I'm at right now saying, we need funding because we can't afford to operate out there. It doesn't, again, make any difference what the name is on the side of the truck. The reality of it is we have a county that has both urban and rural. And those rural communities place a significant drain on the resources that we have available because they just don't produce a lot of revenue to support those costs.
Let me ask you this question.
Yeah,
so if you have areas that are making money, per se, and I know you're talking about going for a countywide tax, would you not just focus on those areas that aren't making you money? Could you go out to those 8 communities and ask, you know, for the subsidy from the taxpayers in that area geographically versus saying City of Port Huron, now we're asking you to subsidize when it's profitable here and it's not profitable over there?
You know, I guess I would answer that this way. We can do whatever anybody wants to do. And I'm not trying to be coy with my answer on that, but when I started down this journey, the first place I went was I came to some of you. You guys know that. The second place I went to was every one of the townships and the communities that we serve. I met with supervisors and boards, and I just said, here's the problem we have. You guys tell me what's the best solution for you. If it's a general fund allocation out of each township and municipality that we serve, I'm fine with that. It doesn't make any difference to us which direction we go. But the more I talked with the community leaders, the more I met with them and shared, you know, the information that I've shared with you tonight, the overwhelming response that I have been getting from the communities are, this makes more sense to do a county-wide tax or millage to fund ambulance services here in the county. That seems to be the overwhelming response. But I will tell you, I am not married to that concept. The bottom line is we estimate that we're going to need significant additional funding from somewhere if we're going to survive and keep our service to the community. Dave?
To go back to that, Jeff, Ken's staff also does standbys on every structure fire. Mm-hmm. That's a no pay for you.
Absolutely.
Does standby on every SRT allocation, every police standoff, any hazmat release, and those are all non-billable, and that's countywide. And those are services that they're there to protect or assist the fire departments on the medical side, so we can concentrate on fire or hazmat. And their backup is vital because they've hauled quite a few of our firefighters and police to the hospital for us. A lot of times for smoke inhalation or, minor incidents, but they're there for the major incidents too. So, and that's a no pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to that earlier slide, I said we do about 20,000 calls a year. Well, the 20,000 calls is what I have to staff for, okay? Because those are requests that come in. People driving I-94 that see a car go off in the ditch, they pick it on their cell phone, they say, there's an accident on I-94. I got to deploy resources to that. So I have a cost, we have a cost incurred to have that resource available. We may get there and it was just an icy road and the guy went in the ditch and didn't have any injuries and we don't transport. There's no revenue generated from that incident. And so while the cost to provide that and have that service available for that incident is fixed, and there are roughly 3,000 or so calls a year that we respond to that we drive no revenue from whatsoever because we don't charge for those services. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I tried to be as quickly as I could. Again, to go back to Commissioner Bohm's comment, I don't think my organization feels that it has to be a millage, but I will tell you, as you talk to your townships and the communities that you represent, that's the feedback that I received from them. I will tell you, I spent most of July, August, and September meeting with different folks. I think I hit just about every municipality with the exception of maybe a couple, and all of them overwhelmingly said that this is what we would prefer, that the county look at a county-wide program moving forward in terms of funding. But again, it doesn't really make that much difference to us. Dollars are dollars. All I'm telling you is as your provider, as the provider of service in the community, without some supplemental funding from some source, we're not going to be able to continue service at the levels that it is within the next couple of years. We have time. We're not going out of business tomorrow. I don't want to make sure everybody understands that, but my job is to look down the road and to try to put together all of the information that I have and anticipate where I believe we're going based on all of that information. And I will tell you, with the rising costs that we're seeing right now, in particular in terms of labor costs and fuel costs and a number of other issues, the revenues that we are generating right now will not continue to support the service that we provide to the citizens of St. Clair County.
I've been around talking, right? So Ken's out, he talks to him, I go back there, and they're concerned, right, about having the phone calls to 911 and then nobody's going to show up, and they're going to have, the local fire departments are going to go out and they're going to be sitting there, and they don't have the manpower, they don't have the training, they don't have the equipment. What I hate to see, if we want to go out into my 8 townships and 2 villages in 1 city and have them try to support something, I'm afraid they're going to come back and say, boy, that's really nice that, Parks and Rec wants to spend some money in Marine City doing this. We have nothing in Yale, we have nothing in K-Pac, we have nothing in Emmett Township. We do have in Goodles, but when you start saying, Park and Rec money gets spent in places, there's a convention center that's sitting in Port Huron, and I don't think a whole lot of revenue. There's not many businesses in Yale and K-Pac that benefit from us spending the money on those type of things. So I really think that if we're going to do this, that it needs to be countywide, and we need to spread this out, because my biggest fear is if we do something short-sighted, and Ken and I talked earlier, the worst thing we can do is say, you know what, we think we're $1 million short next year. We need to go out and try to generate $1 million. Well, we know if we're $1 million short next year, we're going to probably be 1.25 short the following and 1.5. So I'm really hoping that we can have, not unlike our funding that we use for Park and Rec and for everything else that we collect the millage on, and that money can be dedicated, and Ken's company is going to have to come back and show numbers and say, this is our shortfall this year. We need $700,000 to balance. And we might have collected $4.5 million, but they're not getting that. They're gonna get the 750,000. And if the following year, we're up to 6 million, 7 million, and they need 1.2 million, we're gonna have the money there. It'll become somewhat, I don't wanna say perpetual, but it'll take us down the road quite a while. So,
So I don't want to get too far into the weeds on the details, right? But this early, but do you have any idea roughly what that looks like throughout all the units?
Yeah, let me before I answer that, George, let me just back up 1 second. And I would encourage you to do this research. Don't take my word for it, but ask around Michigan. Ambulance service millages and/or subsidies are very commonplace. I will tell you, we are the odd member out. You're going to find that very, very few communities do not offer or have available some form of supplemental funding to provide for ambulance services. In terms of what we think it might look like, Georgia, it's a little complicated because there's a couple of different angles in which we can approach it. And depending on which direction we go depends on how much we would need to collect, if I can make that sound somewhat reasonable. So if we're talking about what we think we need, we've looked at somewhere in the neighborhood of about $0.25 to $0.5 is what I think we would be looking at. And the reason I'm not sure exactly on how much, and let me try and explain this to you. If we went to $0.5, we think, although we're still looking at the numbers, we think that $0.5 would enable us perhaps to waive copays and deductibles. Remember that bad debt $1 million that I put in there? What's mostly in that are people that had deductibles and copays after their insurance paid that didn't pay the bill, okay? If we were to waive those, we would need to collect on a millage enough money to offset that $1 million. But essentially by waiving copays and deductibles, we would essentially be offering every citizen in St. Clair County free ambulance service. Now, when I say free, we would still bill their insurance company and Medicare, but if they had a $100 deductible, we would waive that $100 deductible and we would accept what the insurance pays. That is what's happening throughout other communities across Michigan right now. The one in particular I would point to is Lapeer County. Lapeer County passed an ambulance millage, a countywide ambulance millage in 2016. They just renewed it in 2020. And that's what they did. They collected enough of the millage to offset the losses for waiving the copays and deductibles for people. The copays and deductibles cost them about $500,000, but they collect $2.8 million in their subsidy. And so that was a benefit of passing a millage that they were able to pass back to their citizens, and that made that millage very attractive to their citizens. They just renewed their millage at a 72% pass rate in Lapeer County. So I hope that answered your question. Again, we still need to talk about that. We're not ready to commit
You know,
yet.
we're still at 30,000.
Yeah,
That gets deep, because then you have communities who use someone else. So those moving parts, I just wonder if you had an idea if it was gonna be 2 mils or $0.5, if there was just a general.
I've got to take a really much closer dive into the values here in the county. But at a very, very quick glance, we thought that $0.25 would raise about 1.6 million. So I'm assuming that $0.5 would be about double that. I think that's pretty close to what, again, that's just an estimate based on what we saw.
and then you'd have to figure out the numbers. If you have $1 million that's uncollectible, how many people did pay, right? So, I mean, did you collect $2 million in copays? And if you eliminate those, now are you 3 million short?
Right. You've got to make sure that you're raising enough money through the millage to offset that give back.
And it's
Because
just
if you
for
don't,
residents.
you're just digging yourself a deeper hole.
Right, so somebody from Detroit's driving down I-94 to 69 gets in an accident, they're still gonna be out.
They're gonna pay. They're not gonna get waived because they're not paying the local tax.
Right.
Okay, any other questions for Ken at all?
I have one, Ken. So Marysville. That's my community, also Port Huron Township, which you do service.
Yep.
I know it costs the taxpayers near $1 million a year to have that service, which they totally do support. We've talked to you in the past about coming down there.
Yep.
when I was on the council, and they made it loud and clear that they have no issues with that. So how would that affect the taxpayers in Marysville? if
So
the
I'm gonna,
millage was imposed?
I'm gonna possibly have to defer to the gentleman to your right. Because I'm not entirely sure, but what we have talked about, generally speaking, and I have met actually as recent as Tuesday with Chief Koenig. Marysville is fully supportive of this initiative as long as whatever portion that's collected out of the Marysville values would be returned to Marysville, or would be provided to the city of Marysville. And I personally think that's fair. I would not expect that a community that we don't serve would fund our operation necessarily. Although I will tell you, that is exactly how they do it in Lapeer County. There are 2 providers in Lapeer County. Only one provider receives the millage under the contract with the county. The other provider gets nothing, even though they are providing service to a couple of the communities. I don't suggest that that's what we do here. I think that the appropriate thing is to allocate that amount.
So that doesn't really help the taxpayer. It would go back to public safety.
Yep.
So,
Well, depends on how they
so
use
they're
it,
paying
yeah.
for it twice.
But it could help their overruns in the future.
Who's overrun?
Marysville's, if the costs increase, that they could use that to help keep the.
Or you reduce what, do they pay on a millage now?
No.
I'm not sure how they funded Duke.
Wait a minute. What they do is it comes out of their general fund, which is millage money. So
Right.
obviously, if a bunch of money comes in from essentially a special assessment, then the general fund contribution would go down and presumably the millage rate would go down.
But would it really go down?
Yeah, you'd probably have to ask Randy, and I mean, I don't know how they do it, so I'm not.
Like I said,
I just don't want the
right now,
taxpayers in Marysville to pay
30,000
twice.
mile in it, we're getting into the weeds, but any other questions for Ken? Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you for bringing it up, and like you say, we have to do it ahead of time,
Yeah.
because this is,
I mean, just from a timeline perspective, we've probably got to do something by next summer in terms of an election. We might be able to push it back to a November, but I'm not sure we can survive much beyond that without something resolved, so.
and Ken said if a millage passes, he's gonna continue to work, 7 to 10 years?
Thank you for your time.
All right, item D, the Health Advisory Board appointment.
I make a motion to table the appointment of Tiffany Francis to the Health Advisory Board.
Support.
Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item E, the Brownfield redevelopment.
Mr. Chair, I'd move to approve the reappointment of John Cooper, District 2, and Paul Wade, District 5, to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, each for a 3-year term expiring October 31st, 2024.
Support.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Item F, 2020-122 Child Care Fund Budget.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the child care budget for a term of 10/1/21 through 9/30/22 in the amount of $5,689,068.77.
Support?
Discussion. Roll call.
Commissioner Beeden?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Vanden Bosch?
Yes.
Commissioner McConnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Baldwin?
Yes.
Chairperson Bone?
Yes. Item G, the 2022 Residential Substance Abuse Treatment Grant.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2022 residential substance abuse treatment grant in the amount of $192,742.
Support.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Item H.
Mr. Chair, I'd move for the approval of the fiscal year 2021 Emergency Management Performance Grant agreement in the amount of $35,151.
Support.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Item I.
This time I'd like to make a motion to approve the renewal of the private hangar ground lease parcel T1 with the St. Clair County T Hangar Condominium Association for a term of 9/20/21 through 9/20/50 in the amount of $125,400.
Support.
Discussion. Roll call.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Vanden Bosch?
Yes.
Commissioner McConnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Baldwin?
Yes.
Commissioner Beeden?
Yes.
Chairperson Bone.
Yes. Item J.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the renewal of private hangar ground lease T hangar parcel T-2 with Mr. T Hangar Condominium Association for the term of 9/9/21 through 9/9/2050 in the total of $136,800.
Support.
Discussion. Roll call.
Commissioner Vanden Bosch?
Yes.
Commissioner McConnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Baldwin?
Yes.
Commissioner Beeden?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Chairperson Bone.
Yes. Item K.
I would make a motion to approve the agreement with Ace Golf Netting LP for the installation of the litter fence at the Smiths Creek landfill in the amount not to exceed $52,950.
Support.
Discussion.
Did everybody get to see, it doesn't have to do with this, but the Matt's little interview that he had with,
Blue Water Healthy Living?
yeah. It's pretty neat if you haven't had a chance to look at it.
Roll call.
Who supported?
I did.
Thank you.
Commissioner McConnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Baldwin?
Yes.
Commissioner Beeden?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Vanden Bosch?
Yes.
Chairperson Bone.
Yes. Item L.
At this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve the renewal of the agreement with Waste Management for a term of 10/1/2021 through 9/30/2021.
Support.
Thank you. Not to exceed 26,000. Okay.
Discussion. Roll call.
Commissioner Baldwin?
Yes.
Commissioner Beeden?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Vanden Bosch?
Yes.
Commissioner McConnell?
Yes.
Chairperson Bone.
Yes. Item M, the manning table change for central dispatch.
Mr. Chair, I'd move to approve the request to eliminate 2 communication officer positions and to add 2 supervisor/lead dispatch positions to the central dispatch manning table.
Support.
Discussion.
I'm sorry, who supported that?
Beeden.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Item N.
I would make a motion to approve the request to move 1 pretrial investigator position from part-time to full-time in the sheriff's office manning table.
Support.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Item O.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to request to add a part-time clerk, account clerk 1 to position to the treasurer's office manning table.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Item P.
This time I'd like to make a motion to approve the St. Clair County Retirement System Investment Consultant Agreement with DeHaab Associates for a 10-year term in the amount of $95,000 annually.
Support.
Discussion.
We did interviews with, oh gosh, was it 5?
4.
4, yes, 4 consultants with the retirement board, and I think that this is going to be a better fit than what maybe we had previously, so I think they'll be good moving forward.
Was the previous one just a little too far away, too big, too, just didn't get the right feel?
There, they attended every meeting. The reports were definitely thorough. I don't know that it was just a good fit.
Okay.
For what our system is and for who the users are and maybe where the board thought it needed to go. I think there might be someone who could work with the board a little bit better. We're a small system, really.
Yeah.
It's big to us, but for these consulting firms, we're small. And so we were with a firm that maybe was too big and maybe we didn't get the attention that we needed. I mean, they were always there if you called, but when you would look at some things or you had part of the group was in a subcommittee to look into some things and they found things that could be made better that our consultants didn't find. And so I don't think it's not because they're capable. I think
Right.
maybe we were so little that we didn't get the attention all the time.
Okay.
Well, the 10-year contract, that's going to give them time too, right? I mean,
Okay. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Beeden?
Yes.
Commissioner Dunn?
Yes.
Commissioner Vanden Bosch?
Yes.
Commissioner McConnell?
yes.
Commissioner Baldwin?
Yes.
Chairperson Bone.
Yes. So item R, we have not decided a time yet. I know multiple commissioners have a commitment that evening, and we wanted to move up the time for the meeting if possible. We were looking at maybe like a 4 o'clock kind of thing. If we could do because we have our budget hearing and then our meeting.
So the budget hearing will actually be at your full board meeting, but the presentation of the budget will be at this meeting.
Presentation of the budget, yeah. Is it possible to be able to do something earlier in that day? So let's look at a 4 PM.
Mr. Chair, I'd move to change the time of the 11/4/21 Standing Committee meeting to 4 PM.
Support.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 12, Administrators Report.
I have a-
Oh, shoot, yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot about that. The Resolution 2118.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 2118, apportioning taxes for 2021.
Support.
Discussion. David?
No.
Oh, I see. Hey, you did that.
Yeah, no, I've got one more going.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed. Resolution 21-19.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 21-19 imposing the 2020-21 property tax levy.
Support.
Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed. Okay, now moving on to the
Now I'm done.
Administrator's Report.
Next month, I will be bringing to you a recommendation on the use of some of our American Rescue Plan Act funds for some internal county projects. I know previously there had been some discussion amongst board members too on allocating a portion of those funds for each commissioner to use for projects in your districts. Certainly, if that's what you would like to do, we can bring that proposal forward to you as well. There was, earlier this week, this is a little bit of a change, but the Senate did pass. It has a long name, but it's basically a flexibility act that gives us more flexibility in how we spend those funds. Now, it does still have to, fully pass. However, this does allow counties to allocate up to 10 million of those funds just for the provision of government services or infrastructure-related activities that exist under several different federal programs. So it loosens up the restrictions quite a bit from just the water, sewer, or those specific buckets it was in. So if that passes, the board would have some more options on how to spend those funds. Essentially, that 10 million would be unrestricted and you could use it towards any government services, similar to what you can to the revenue loss calculation. So I don't know if we'll get any final information on that. It just passed the Senate on October 19th, so we are watching it and keeping an eye on it, and I'll let you know as I find out more. Did you want to add anything about that, Commissioner Bohm?
Well, yes, so we still are talking about 26 Mile Road. We're still talking about large tracts of land. I had a couple phone conversations last week. One, and I can share this, it was with Trevor Lauer from DTE. We were talking about St. Clair County looking at large land assemblies ready to develop sites. As you probably recently saw, a lot of the news around, the state losing Ford and so on and so forth. So when we were up on Mackinac Island, Georgia, and myself met with the head of the Detroit Regional Prosperity, we talked to her extensively about that. If you see recently, it looks like the MEDC is going to put some money into trying to secure some of these mega sites. Quentin Messer, who is the director of MEDC, is going to be in town. I'm going to be with him November 9th for a series of meetings, and I want to hopefully pitch some of the St. Clair County has some funds available. Would the state of Michigan be willing to commit some additional funds? Trevor Lauer had told me that he would commit to putting the infrastructure at a site, that he said I would be able, I can share that information, share it with Quentin. So having some monies to be able to match. Currently, we have 31 million. Carrie's working on some internal projects she's going to bring before us. We had talked previously too about commissioners getting an allocation to be able to go back to their districts and do some things that they see or deem necessary. The numbers that I had in my mind was 500,000 per commission district, if the commissioners were comfortable with that. Don't want to get into where we tie people's hands because different people's priorities. Greg, you're in a very rural area, so priorities out there may vary a lot more than Georgia or Lisa, and same in St. Clair, so on and so forth. So I don't want to get into like your project stinks, mine is good, yours is horrible. I mean, really, you go back to your individual elected folks and come up with some things that is a priority for your district, and we will support. Hopefully in December, not that all the commissioners will have their money so-called spent by then, but have an allocation. So if you were to spend it or get the allocation sooner than later, so be it. All these allocations will have to come back before the board, though, for board's approval as far as money's moving forward. But I mean, we talked about needs and different things and money, so there's still substantial money that we could set aside to help try to entice some of this other stuff through MEDC. So there's going to be, I've got some, pretty interesting meetings coming up here in the very near future to know if that is even feasible, reasonable. Carrie, myself, Gary, a couple others, road commission, met with Ira and Clay, and, we talked to them the other day about looking at some improvements. So lots of meetings, lots of moving pieces. This site readiness thing is not going away, and to the point that the state even obviously realizes it. So when you start trying to, scrub 400 or 500 acres together, you're not doing that in Macomb, you're not doing that in Oakland, you're not doing, so now you're talking in these more outer lying areas and stuff. So I think there's some good potential for us there. I know it's a long-winded answer, but are commissioners comfortable with the district, the money per district, and that number if we give Carrie specifics?
So when we're looking at this Senate bill that we don't know if where it's going to end up, is it going to be the same percentage-wise right? I mean, my townships are getting 100,000 or something, and they don't know where to spend it, right? They have no water system, they have no sewer system, they can spend it on, they had small little losses because of the COVID issues. So they're going to be able to get a little bit of money out of theirs, but they're going to have to spend it on something for, whether it be some type of internet, services or something. Are they going to be allowed to spend a portion of their money on something else too?
So I have not dug into the bill far enough. I was just looking at NACO's, the National Association of Counties analysis, which was county specific. So I don't know if this loosening of restrictions would help the non-entitlement units or not, but I can look a little further and see.
I think on I think SEMCOG is doing an ARPA workshop that would talk about municipalities at all of the levels. I want to say that's next Thursday. It's a Zoom thing,
Right.
but question and answer and kind of go over
Okay.
some of that stuff. So I can see if I can, it's probably on SEMCOG's website. I think registration was required, there was no fee. And I think they set aside 3 hours for it, but I believe it was going to be specific to spending the ARPA funds.
And I think one thing too that you really have to look at if you go back to your districts, look at participating funds, right? Look at, okay, the county's got some money, we're willing to put up 50%, you're willing, you just don't want to go in and cure someone's headache and they're not willing to participate. If you do, you do. It's at the end of the day, I don't want to sit here and micromanage what the commissioners do.
Well, you want to
because
leverage it, right? You want to make it work.
you would hopefully be able to go and leverage it with some of the priorities that they have and to put some of these things, over the edge, so.
And until you ask, so I hadn't spoken to, Birchville, I didn't think had much, and then when I reached out with kind of a formal request, they've got a $3.5 million water infrastructure problem that they need fixed. So, it hadn't been on my radar until we started talking about this piece. So, there may be projects out there that we're not all that aware of, because maybe there's a community who doesn't think they have an opportunity to even get close to it. So I was pretty shocked.
I touched base with our downriver fire chiefs just to get a feeling from them without going to their bosses first. What did they think that, and they started throwing out a few things, and I go, I don't want to do something that's every day. I would like you to come up with something that you probably wouldn't normally be able to do. Is this something that, and they actually came up with some great ideas, and we'll be bringing it back to you, but they also pointed me in different directions where to go talk to, and with different department heads, which I thought was pretty big of them, instead of just saying, asking it for themselves. And they gave me different areas that in their communities that needed some attention, and some was the warning siren system. Not necessarily the ones that are broke, because we finally got those back all online and working, but we've got a huge area that has none. And some of these communities don't really have the funds to do on their own, but if we could help them, it's not a glamorous thing, but when a tornado comes through your community, there's not a siren on Harson's Island. The whole island, nothing. And it's one of the places that gets hit. That's been hit, not the very last time, but at least the time before. So
go talk to your folks and get some ideas on what you might be looking for, and Carrie will bring some stuff back to us. Did you have more stuff in your administrator's report?
I do.
I'm sorry.
Earlier this week, we began interviewing for the airport director position. We've had fortunate to have some excellent candidates. We're going to be bringing a couple back for second interviews to tour the airport, and hopefully be able to get someone in place by mid-November, so we can have at least a 2-week overlap with Kathy to learn what's the ropes and the status of all the projects out there. The 26-mile road corridor study, the bids have been received and the consultants have been interviewed, and we hope to have, the committee hopes to have a recommendation to you next month for your approval. You'll recall the outage we had at dispatch last month due to the power outage because of the UPS failure. A new UPS has been installed, tested, and that is up and working. And we are now looking at actually having a backup. So this will be a backup to our backup, but that would have prevented the issue we had last time. And lastly, next week, Dean and I will be participating in a bond rating call with Standard & Poor's. We're still going forward with the convention center bond refunding, and that will close later this year. That's it.
Okay. I have a motion for the administrator's report.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Miscellaneous business. I need the commissioners to look at their calendars for Wednesday, November 3rd. It will be from 2 o'clock on. I will be calling you. I've got the luxury of hosting my own show, GRS Media. So what we're going to do is, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to reach out to commissioners and bring them in and do commissioner interviews. So I will be calling you guys to schedule up some time slots. And so just check your calendar and I'll be getting back with you.
That's the Wednesday before our meeting.
Yep, it's the Jeff Baum show. It's a new
Oh, boy.
I said, I'll try it. So that is it. Receive and file.
I would make a motion to receive and file packets that were sent to commissioners, packets at their places, and any other information presented.
Support.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
15, adjournment.
Make motion.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.